Hello. Take two. Hey there. Welcome to another episode of Soap Goes to the Oscars. This is episode 80, and this is the final official movie of the 1937 Oscars, the winner, if you will. I say official because there's also going to be a snubbed movie, but that's sort of, outside of the officiality of it all. So this one I'm recording on March 22nd, 2025, also the day I watched the movie. And that movie is The Life of Emile Zola. It was available on Max, so it was free. And that brings my total spent for this entire set of 10 movies to $4.27 for an average of 43 cents a movie. That I think is the best average that I've had so far. And if we look at the totals here, the total I have spent on just movies is $237.86 for an average of $3.05. Adding in that DVD player I bought, it's $269.92 for an average of $3.42. I have watched 8,141 minutes, and I watched 78 of the 610 movies so far, keeping in mind that two of them were not available to watch anymore. So I'm at number 80 on the list here, I guess. But so yeah, there's some stats. Let's see. Anything else? There was something else I was going to say. Oh, I have a new stat. So this round of Oscars, I started on February 21st, 2025, and I finished on March 22nd, 2025. It took me 29 days to finish. Not as fast as I had hoped, being that most of these movies were available for free. Sometimes, I have to order them from eBay or Amazon or somewhere, and I got to wait for it to come and all that. But this was the fastest. So that's not quite true. The first round of movies, there was only three. In the first ceremony year, there was only three. It took me 21 days to complete. Second year, there was four films. Took me 22 days. This was pretty good. In the 1930 to 31 Oscars, fourth ceremony, there were five movies. I watched them all in 9 days. That was my fastest. But after that, it started going up. So it was 8 movies, then 10 movies, 12, 12, and 11 for the 1 year, 10, 10. So since we've gotten into like the double digits, this 29 days has been the fastest. The worst was 79 days for the 1932 to 33 Oscars. Anyway, I like numbers. So this is a new stat I'll throw at you at the end of when I do the best picture winners. The Life of Emile Zola is a 1937 American biographical film about the 19th century French author Emile Zola, starring Paul Muni and directed by William Dieterle. Paul Muni was in the last movie that I reviewed as well, which I did not like, called The Good Earth. And he also won Best Actor the previous year for The Story of Louis Pasteur. This movie premiered at the Los Angeles Carthay Circle Theater to great critical and financial success. Contemporary reviews ranked it as the greatest biographical film made up to that time. 2000, it was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry. Produced during the Great Depression and after the Nazi Party had taken power in Germany, the film failed to explore the key issue of anti-Semitic injustice in France in the late 19th century when Zola became involved in the Dreyfus Affair and worked to gain the officer's release. Some recent studies have noted the film as an example of Hollywood's timidity at the time. Anti-Semitism was not mentioned in the film, nor was Jew said in dialogue. Some explicitly anti-Nazi films were canceled in this period and other content was modified. This was the period when Hollywood had established the production code, establishing an internal censor in response to perceived threats of external censorship. The Life of Emile Zola became the second biographical film to win the Academy Award for Best Picture. As I said, directed by William Dieterle, screenplay by Heinz Herold and Geza Herzeg and Norman Riley Rain. Story by Heinz Herold and Geza Herzeg. Produced by Henry Blank. cinematography by Tony Gaudio, edited by Warren Lowe, music by Max Steiner, distributed by Warner Brothers Pictures. It was released on August 11th, 1937, with a runtime of 116 minutes. This was it was available on Turner Classic. It was on Max, but it's through like Turner Classic Movies, and so it had a little intro by their guy, and he said that it was nominated for 10 Oscars, which at the time was a record. I think 2 years later, Gone with the Wind broke the record with 13. And then that I think has become the most, like that Emilia Perez just got 13 this most recent year. But this was nominated for Best Picture, which it won, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Supporting Actor, which it won, Best Writing Screenplay, which it won, Best Art Direction, Best Music Score, Best Sound Recording, Best Writing Original Story, and Best Assistant Director. There's quite a bit of information in here. I'm not going to read too much of it or any more of it, really. But this was basically, it is a true story ish. It does say at the beginning that, some things have been fictionalized and some names changed. But it's set in the mid to late 19th century, and it depicts his life. It starts out with his early friendship with post-impressionist painter Paul Cézanne and his rise to fame through his prolific writing. And then it sort of, gets into the crux of the film, which is the Dreyfus Affair, which was there was a traitor found in the French army, and they blamed it on this man Alfredo Dreyfus, I think his name was, but he was innocent, and they sent him off to live on Devil's Island, and he did not do what they said he did. But then they, a year or so later, they found out the person that actually was the traitor. And instead of, trying that man and finding him guilty and releasing Dreyfus, they decided to hide it. So they did have a court martial for the guy that actually did it. I can't remember his name now. But they basically just acquitted him so that they could. Major Walson Esterhazy was his name. He was the actual spy. They basically just acquitted him so that the army wouldn't look bad. I think the guy was in prison for like 6 years, something, 4 to 6 years, somewhere in there. And eventually Zola finds out, like they find some documents that prove that the other guy did it, and comes to light. So he writes an article in the newspaper about it, and then basically he gets thrown in jail and put on trial because of this. And so then it sort of becomes like a courtroom drama in the last half. And it ends with his death, which was maybe mysterious, maybe coincidental. Hard to say, but it was definitely kind of weird. So it was really good. I mean, Paul Muni, I really like him a lot. He was in, the other thing they mentioned in the opening on the Turner Classic Movies thing was that he had a 30-year career, but he only made 22 movies, and he was nominated for Best Actor for 6 of those movies. Not all of them were nominated for Best Picture, so I have not watched all of them, but the first one was The Valiant, 1930. It says Best Actor in a Leading Role. No official nominees had been announced that year. I Am a Fugitive from a Chain Gang in 1932. That was one of my favorite movies of that year. I think it was my favorite movie. That was the first movie where I said I would watch this again. He was really good. 1935, Black Fury. 1937 or 36, The Story of Louis Pasteur, which he won. And then 1937, Life of Emile Zola. And 1959, The Last Angry Man. So, it said that he, was like one of the most popular actors of the 30s. He is really good. And this was no different. It reminded me a lot of his performance in The Story of Louis Pasteur. It was almost a kind of a similar role. And I don't know if that's just because it's him playing him or because the two men actually had some similar qualities, but all around, just a great movie. And I think I gave this one 4 stars on Letterboxd, and worth it definitely just for his performance. But all the supporting actors and actresses are really good as well. So definitely worth a look, and much better than his other nominated movie in this round, which was the Good Earth, which I reviewed last time, and where he played a Chinese man and probably shouldn't have. So that is pretty much all I got for this one. There is a bunch of information on Wikipedia, but I'm not going to read it all. So I'm just going to leave it at that and say, see you next time.